Welcome to Offgrid Victory. This is the 2.0 version of the framing that I've been doing on the shipping containers. I wanted to make this video just to give you a slightly more detailed plan and an idea of how to create these containers. And like I said, this is the 2.0 version, so the second one. I just pretty much completed framing. I have a little bit more to do on the inside, but I'll show you that. But I wanted to go over how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it, and answer some of those questions out there on YouTube land of why I particularly chose to do it in the fashion that I am doing it. So let's go in. And of course, yeah, excuse the way this camera looks a little bit. I'm using a fisheye lens just to give you guys a wider perspective. So first thing you'll notice, come in here, we have a little bit different windows in here than the first container. So I have 1, 2, 3 on one side, and they are 48 by 48 windows. And once again, I am choosing to put them up high like this, partly for the cross breeze, and right now it's pretty windy here. You can't hear it, but I can definitely feel it, and it's really a nice cross breeze, and I really wanted that for this structure because obviously shipping containers do get hot in the summer, and I figure in the winter time it'll be insulated well enough with the glass that that'll be taken care of. And also obviously I'll have a wood stove in here as well, and so it should be nice and cozy. Now, somebody asked me why I put the windows so high. So, first of all, it's up that high for the ventilation, obviously. Secondly, the other reason I wanted to put it up so high is so that I can utilize the lip. Now, you can't see it from this side, but you can see it from the outside. There's a lip on a container, and that's where all of this framing was done to. That particular lip or drip edge was utilized to caulk on the outside surface of this window. So I didn't want any of the corrugated material to wick water down into the window. So I utilized the lip of the container here so that water would cascade off of it. And then later maybe I'll collect it for water catchment or something like that. But for now, the main concern is to get that water off the window and over it. And so instead of actually coming down in and cascading down into the window, so that's another reason why I had the windows that high. And lastly, the other thing is just I just think it's nicer. I have a garden out there. It's just nicer at this height, so that you know, I have height to put cabinets. This area is going to be a bathroom, so it's going to have a tub and everything else, and I just like that distance where I could put dressers, things like that, against the wall, because obviously this is a shipping container, and in the shipping container the premium space really is the width. I mean, I'm only going to get about 7.5 feet out of this, a little bit more. Once all the drywall and obviously the framing, all of that is in. And so the other thing I wanted to do to mention again, why did I go with 2x4s on a horizontal versus the traditional stud of going the other way, that way? And so that's easy. I mean, that's just to increase the space of the interior of the container. Obviously, if I went this way, I would lose another 1 3/4 inches. Same with the other side, so 3 inches. So obviously that saves all that space. The other thing I wanted to quickly say is, yeah, somebody mentioned, you know, all of this 2x4 construction is way overkill for a shipping container. And I would agree with that, just to hang drywall. And I would agree with that if you weren't going to cut any windows and if you didn't build the way I like to build. And so, you know, the other things to think about when you're building these containers is every time you cut a window like this in, you're decreasing the structural integrity of the shipping container. So what happens is that once that frame inside of there was cut out, the metal underneath starts bowing. And so you need the rigidity of the 2x4 frame to keep that intact and to keep it in place. And in fact, between this span right here, it's roughly 89 3/8, there was a, let's say a brace that was used right in the center to hold it in place while the rest of the framing of these windows were done, in order to keep this distance exactly the same as the height above the floor. And so that's why that was done that way as well. And then the other questions that I had were, well, look, why didn't you utilize the corrugated inside space to tuck your 2x4s into, so you would get even more space? And, you know, that's a great idea. But the problem with that is, as you can see, I'm using these bracket braces, these metal bracket braces, to hold up the exterior, the roof joist here. And so the problem of using these guys is, you can see there's an offset there. So it just gets a little bit more complicated. And then of course it doesn't always fit exactly where I want it to fit, which is every other corrugated high end, the crest of each one, because that's what I'm going to use to hang my drywall. So it didn't really match. And so that was the other issue of going inside that space on the ceiling to utilize more space. And of course, doing it this particular way, now that this particular side rail holds up against this rail at the top and then comes down. And of course, now that's all set in there solidly. And overall, the framing is going to be a lot more rigid. The other thing somebody asked is, why even bother gluing some of this to the wall? Well, part of it is I needed to do that initially just to make sure that the 2x4s would stay on the wall while I was creating the joist up top and against the side. The other thing I also used was, like I said, a brace directly across just to hold it in place before I put the top brace on as well. And so that's why it is the way it is. The other question I asked was, well, why all these joists in terms of the center here? Why didn't you just go straight across? Well, that's just ease of drywall. I mean, I needed this brace in the center because I'm going to be using 8 foot by 4 foot sheets, and so that's obviously have to get cut in half, and so that's why I have the middle there. In terms of these outlets, like right here, I have a 45 on that. That's really just to hold the weight. I didn't really do that for everything in the first container, but I decided, well, why not do it for this one? It's overkill, but I like building stuff a little bit more rigid with a little bit more redundancy, especially here. I mean, if you see this thing, it's just a mammoth structure. Now, the reason why this is done this way is I'm going to have a ceiling fan in this container. And that ceiling fan is going to take a lot of vibrational weight as well. And so I wanted something really hefty in there. And so you can see 45 cross bracings here. And then, of course, these lateral braces right around here. And I was actually hanging off that, and it was fine. And I'm not quite 200 pounds, but could hold my weight. So it's not going anywhere. It's not shifting. It's more than enough to handle fans. And so that's why that was done. In terms of the spray foaming, which I'm going to do later, obviously I'm ready for spray foaming now. Somebody had asked why, what's going to happen in the space between the 2x4 wood and the metal, because obviously my objective initially was to cover this entire structure in terms of the interior metal with an insulative material so that I wouldn't get condensation or sweat. whether it's from just exterior moisture or from actually people being inside of this thing and creating moisture that way. So my answer to that is wood itself is an insulator, and it has some insulative properties in that, the fibers, the cell walls of the wood itself contain air pockets. And so in that sense, wood will act as a insulator, and the direct contact, you're not going to get direct conductivity off this metal in order for the metal to sweat on one of the surfaces. Because you have the wood against it. And of course, the rest of it is going to be spray foamed. And what's nice about the spray foam also, it will act as glue. So wherever I don't have it glued, let's say, or I missed a spot, it'll act as an adhesive as well. And then of course on the center here, I did this a little bit differently on this container. This is my outtake for the chimney. I'm going to put a Yodel stove in there. I have a couple different models. I put it at the level of the tallest model that I have, because I can always build a platform up for the shorter guys if I need to use it. And so that was done here. And this whole space right here is going to take, it's going to take tile. Obviously, it's going to take first the cement board material and tile, just for the heat retarding factors of it, and the rest of it will be drywalled or something else. I have to figure that out, but mostly it will be drywalled. And the other question I had was in terms of, well, why did you lay your container out in such a way where you have multiple cross braces? Well, these braces, like I told in the first video, is for drywall to hang 4x8 sheets. And so I can hang one there, and the bottom there is just a little piece that I'm going to use because just in case I get moisture on the floor, I have pressure treated material as my floor wood. And then if it ever comes up into the drywall, well, I can just cut that piece out, and then I have a full sheet here. So easy repair kind of work too for the future. And so those are the kind of questions that I've been getting. Now, the final thing here in this particular container, I'm going to do, the last container I had a closet in here. This container is going to get a food pantry. The food pantry area is going to start over here and end over here. And then of course the windows here. There'll be an entryway over there, and then this will all be drywalled. Now the reason why this was done that way is because I want to be able to keep the pantry area dark, and but I still want a lot of ventilation in this particular container. So that's why it was reset. Now, there's a lot of things going on here with bracing and things like that. Well, part of it is because of right there, that structural corner on the container, the rear of this container, and that sticks out a little bit. So unfortunately, I'll have to drop this particular ceiling here, where you see all the bracing right there, below the level of my normal ceiling right here. And so I'll have to put a little bit more wood behind that and drop it down. That's why this particular light receptacle is on the surface of there. And I'm going to move back here. And the rest of my receptacles are inside, like there. And so that's why there's a difference there, because the walls are going to be pretty much straight and flat up until there. And then I'm going to have another wall here, and inside the closet or the pantry, that particular ceiling is going to be a little bit lower, a few inches, just really to accommodate this guy, this metal corner. The other thing I did a little bit different here is, as you can see, I have a very wide opening here for the corner of the rear, and that is really to get the spray foam inside. I noticed when I was spray foaming last time, I don't know if I was able to hit every single nook and cranny with the framing construction that I did before, where I had a nice corner. I had a nice 45 corner here to take the drywall, but as you can see, I'm pretty much there on this, and so I'll have a pretty good corner for the drywall itself, and I'll also use corner tape to make it more rigid. So I don't necessarily need a hard a hard 90-degree corner with the 2x4s in order to make the drywall work. So yeah, that was the other thing I did here that was a little bit different. And of course, I ended up actually spanning out the 2x4s a little bit better on this particular construction, I think, which worked out a lot better and made the back more rigid. Now, and of course, some of these extra 2x4s are just there because I'm going to put a wall, like I said, up here for the pantry area. And then let's go further into the container here and just show you what I did. So I'll do more videos in terms of how I cut windows and how I put in these sliding doors. But really, in this space, there's a lot of airflow going on right now. In here, in this particular space, I chose not to put a window in this space, particularly because we're gonna put a kitchen here. There's gonna be a wall in this area to close off the bathroom. And really, the walls here are going to be used for cabinetry, and that's why there's no windows here. Otherwise, I would cut windows into it. And in fact, my next 3.0 construction of my next container, I will have 8 windows that are 48 by 48, which will even give me more airflow and circulation. And so that is it. That is the framing video. And if anyone else has questions about why I particularly did the framing the way I did, please leave it in the comments. I don't really have time to answer all of them just because I am off grid and very busy. But I'll try to get to the answers somehow in a video format or directly. Stay tuned because I will put in more detailed videos about how I make these particular cuts, like let's say the cuts here for the brace for the ceiling and the wall, and these things too, like the specialized bracing for these sliding doors, and the frame for the windows like that. Just because I'm not doing any kind of welding work here, because there's problems with that too. I mean, obviously different metals sweat at different rates, whatever, and yeah, and more time intensive and materials and equipment, things like that. So I decided to just go with simple cutting it out and framing and caulking and such. So this was the most effective, the fastest way that I can get it done. So this is how I chose to do that. And then yeah, I'll do another more detailed video about how I set up the wood stove. I did this a little bit different, the layout. I realized I put way too much wood in there for the first time, and really all I needed to do is cover this particular section so I can frame. And then I really needed just to put in the proper back support for these guys, so I can drill in from the outside to hang the chimney on this. So those are really it. Like I said, if you have anything more, please let me know, and stay tuned for more stuff that's coming. Alrighty, shalom.